You have 5 minutes to grab your Bibles. 5 minutes. Or your phones. Or you can look online. Or whatever. I'll see you in 5 minutes. Oh, hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing pretty well. Yourself?
Good. I'm
I
tackling a great clean your room challenge.
yeah. You were saying.
Pretty bad.
Yeah. I have a friend going in for surgery, so that's what I'm thinking
Oh,
about, praying about. A friend of mine has to get quadruple bypass surgery. Yeah, yeah. So his name is Hugh. Lord God, please have Hugh be all right. Um, Cassandra says, "Nice to see you, Sandy." See, she doesn't even care about me. She sees me all the time. All I get is these white peaked waves.
they're kind of nice.
But she's especially happy to see you.
Yeah. I like seeing Cassandra too.
Yeah. She's been attending more often.
Good.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. We are switching books. I don't know if you saw that. So
I did.
we're going into First Samuel. So we have moved out of the writings. I said this before. Ruth is actually in the writings. It's not as it's not as high up as First and Second Samuel is, which is considered to be prophets. Let me just say as well, anyone who's watching can show up. There's some guy that I was talking to on Christian Baxter's chat, and I kind of invited him to talk. So some guy might show up, possibly to fight me. We'll see what happens.
That's an interesting name.
Christian Baxter.
No, some guy.
Oh, some guy. I don't know. I can't remember what his name is. If only Michael were here. I like that. Michael, you've been called out. Come on, man. Pull your truck over already. Um, I sent him the information personally. Personally. Um, yeah. But so we're going to be getting into First Samuel. Do you have any experience with First Samuel? I never know what sections you've really focused on in the Bible.
I'm not digging deeply enough. My ex was absolutely anything through Samuel, Kings, Chronicles. Those he was totally into. So yes, I've read it. Mm-hmm.
Chronicles. Ugh. I really like this.
Worse than Job. Or
Yeah, no, it's the way that I feel about Chronicles is it's as though the writer of Chronicles is like, "Hey, did you like First and Second Kings? Yeah. Okay. Well, here it is again." That's what those books are like to me. I'm like,
that's why my ex loved it.
Didn't we go through this already? Cassandra loves Samuel, and yet she is not here.
She could be busy. She might jump on in a bit.
Yeah. Oh, she had to teach it to an 11/12-year-old. Not fun.
You should love it. Why don't they love it?
Oh, I love. Well, no. It's difficult to figure it out. Maybe she loves the story because she says she loves Samuel. Maybe it was the child that was not fun. Yeah. Yes. So I very, very much love these stories. I find them to be a very cohesive narrative where we're going to be introduced to it pretty soon. Maybe not this week, but the issue of what happens to our children, judging parents by their children.
That's been my whole morning topic of conversation with people. I even had the Heidelberg Catechism out for Sinus's commentary.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I know of these things.
Again, if people are watching this live, I hope that people would keep my friend Hugh in their hearts. My friend Hugh has just entered in. I was just told by my wife has just entered surgery right now. Cassandra. Wow. Cassandra is speaking to us from the void. No, that's from heaven. You can see how white the background is. Oh, okay. No, you're back in reality. Nope, back in the void. It's as you lean forward, it's like an angelic thing. So lean back. So she's a human being. And then as you approach, oh,
Would you
okay.
really rather see her face or her background? Seriously. Come on.
No. It's not. I don't have a problem with it. It's just.
I just feel funny about how much I've shown of my house on stream so far. I don't know. So now I'm just sitting in front of this window.
I have this one piece of artwork that I've been working on forever. A picture of my wife. There's books over there. Yeah, how much to show? There's a door beside me. Ooh, nice door.
Not live, but just in voice chats. I have literally turned the computer around and admitted to what's off screen.
Yeah, right on the edges. There's just all kinds of things dying that I just won't show you. So, Cassandra, did you enjoy the book? And it was the child that was not fun?
Yeah, because I have.
That
no,
exhale.
I mean, I like him. I like him, but he's not, what do you call it? He does not like sitting and reading. Like,
Right.
He's not that kind of person. He's in sports all year long. He loves being active and stuff. So yeah, that's just like, how do I get this kid to listen for at least an hour to me?
Yeah.
40 minutes. I'll take that.
Samuel, live stream in the car. Captive audiences.
Yeah. So we'll be covering that. Do you guys have any thoughts on what you think the book is about? Sandy, what do you think this book is about?
Well, so Samuel is one of the Old Testament prophets. He is very much involved with some of the kings who don't always want to see him show up on their doorstep. That's
a great way of setting it up. Yeah. Cassandra, what do you think this book is about? What are some of the themes that it comes back to again and again?
I don't know. It seems like there's this whole thing of like not being able to find a good human leader. Because we go through the whole book of Judges and then Samuel. And then there's this theme where like the priest's sons, like our religious leaders, turn corrupt very quickly within a generation. And then they want a king because that's a problem. And then that goes bad. And then for all the kingships after that, they always talk about how good things were under David and Solomon. So you had maybe 2 good kings where things were like, this is great. And then it's been a downhill spiral.
Yeah.
Ever since.
Yeah, that is very, very true. And there's a corruption of leadership that's an issue within the text. There's all kinds of issues related to God as king as well that we're going to get to, especially the early stories. I think in order to understand them, you have to realize to what extent they thought of God as king. In fact, in a lot of the blessings, when Jews will say a blessing, it'll oftentimes be, "Blessed are you, Lord God, King of the universe." Melech Olam will be part of one of the blessings, and they'll say that before they say, "Who commands us to light candles on Sabbath, who commands us to wrap ourselves in tzitzit." Like there'll be all kinds of blessings that are said, but the beginning of fulfilling the commandment will be, "Blessed are you, Lord God, King of the universe." You start with that as like one of God's most important titles in Jewish prayer.
Mm-hmm. And just catching out one of the past tense verbs. it's still today.
Oh yeah,
that's ongoing. Yeah.
And
God is king.
Yeah, like right today. millions are doing prayers and are thanking God for their bread. And before they thank God for their bread, they speak of him as being king of the universe. Yeah, so we're gonna jump into it. What, Sandy? Share with the class.
I'm so sorry. I'm thinking, of course, you have to say King of the universe. I'm thinking, I apologize. But I'm picturing the little boy standing on top of the sand hill screaming, I am king, which has come up before. And if you say you are king, you are obviously not. But at the same time, I'm thinking, all of the commentary on God as creator. If God is creator, he has to be king of the universe as well. Only one who can actually say it or have it said about him.
Right, for it to be rightful.
Every speck of sand, everything there. Yep. That's what I was. Yeah.
Excellent. Let's get into the text, shall we? Sandy, you read the first section.
Okay. Excuse me. There was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuph, an Ephrathite. He had 2 wives. The name of the one was Hannah, the name of the other Peninnah. Okay. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children.
Okay. I don't know if you remember one of my greatest hits. One of my bingo bits is, how can you tell who is an important character in a biblical story? Do you know how you can tell? It's very, very simple. How many people do you know named Elkanah? How many people do you know named Tohu? Don't know any Tohus. Oh, look at that. Hannah. I know a lot of Hannahs. That's how you immediately, when reading a biblical story, can figure out who is going to be important.
I've met a lot of Davids.
Yes, exactly. You come across that name, you're like, that guy's going to be big. I'm sure that guy's going to be big. All of his brothers, though, you hear the brother names and you're just like, who cares? Don't even need to remember that name. Okay, so a woman from the tribe of Ephraim. There's 2, again, there was a certain man. This sounds like the beginning of Exodus. We're not getting into specifics, just some guy, right? It's like the text itself is like, who even cares, right? We do get his name, but again, he's just some dude, and he has 2 wives, and the one who appears not to be blessed by God is named Hannah. Okay. Cassandra, can you read this next section?
Now this man used to go up year by year from his city to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh, where the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests of the Lord. On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion, because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival used to provoke her grievously to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went on, year by year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. And Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons?
Okay. What is this supposed to remind us of? Definitely supposed to remind us of something.
All the other women that couldn't birth children.
Yes, there's a specific one that I'm thinking of because there's one that has children that's provoking
Oh yeah, Leah and Rachel.
Leah and Rachel, and the other one that I'm thinking of is
Hagar and
Hagar. Yeah, there we are. The favored one is the one that doesn't have children, and the unfavored one is like, well, this is something I have against them. It is specifically attacking.
Is it implied because it says her rival used to provoke her? So we're supposed to assume that means his other wife.
Yes. Yeah, because the one has multiple children, got a ton. Has at least 4, because it's to her sons and her daughters, right? So she has at least 4 children, which means you got replacements. And she's got nothing. So her rival provokes her. This last bit, this is such pinnacle husbandry. Where he's Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? No, you're not.
Well, I don't know if I'd agree with you completely. I think she could say yes, but at the same time, there's always that there's always that place of wanting to have. The more you love a man, the more you want his children. You don't just run around and go, hey, there's a guy, he's got money, he's got a car, he's got a house, he'll do. No, you don't. You just don't.
I mean, maybe we can just say he's just saying the only thing that he can think to say is a man. Like, no, those jeans don't make you look fat.
Cassandra, do you have any comments on his comment?
I mean, it's funny because it does sound like something you'd hear. Like this perspective, it's like this is so logical, but it misses the point.
He gets too this to me is why the Bible is so good at storytelling. He gets almost nothing to say, and yet there's so much characterization in what he says. Like it's so human. It's such an exposure of what he's like. And this is what it's like so often I feel, particularly Christians are given this pressure that it's not good to ever be asking God for things and to be displeased with our lives. But here she is. She's unhappy. She is unhappy, and it doesn't matter how good the other things are. Her husband absolutely loves her, gives her twice as much to try to take care of her. It's not enough. It's deeply upsetting. Right?
If you say so. I still maintain it can be more than enough and still. Yeah. But I'm biased. Go for it. I've got my request in for whatever comes next. Like, seriously.
Okay. All right. Next section. Sandy, this is you.
After they had eaten and drunk in Shiloh, Hannah rose. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, Then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head.
Okay. What is that? What is no razor should touch his head?
Nazarite vow.
Michael, you're doing a great job. I was really worried you're going to say Jesus. Is it Jesus? um, yes, that's
Watching
right.
far too much Jacob, David.
Yeah, so it's a Nazarite vow. There's so much in there. The title that she uses for God, right? God of the angel, like Hashem of the angel armies is how this might be translated.
So I have a question then.
Yeah.
Does that refer only to angelic hosts, or could it mean of all of his children that he has made?
Could refer to that, could refer to the stars, could be this like because it's sometimes heavenly hosts, right? Is how it'll be kind of put together. Look, we need to use this term more. Okay, Christians need to refer to God as God of the angel armies.
Guess in that one Chris Tomlin song, he used that line. It kind of sounds, I don't know. It's a little cheesy when you spell it out that way, though.
Yeah.
You guys did not hang around with charismatic intercessors enough. Just saying.
Yeah, so there's that title. If you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me and not forget your servant. So the prayers that she's using, man, we would never use these terms, right? To say, God, you have forgotten me. Why can't you see me? This is language that is very, very honest for how she feels. And I feel like Christians in particular would correct themselves 12 times to speak that, like, yeah, God already sees you. He hasn't forgotten you. You're asking for something, but he's not forgotten you. But look at this chutzpah.
People really don't pray like that. You pray like that, don't you, David?
I try to. God, I try to. I think it's important to be encountered by the text, because there's things in the text that by people's practice, they would consider heretical. That you just go, really? There's room for it. How do I know there's room for it? Because here it is right there in the book.
So I maybe struggle a bit with that concept because of what you're pointing to, that there's a lot of people who would say that to pray like that is heretical. But just on my own, if I'm reading the Bible and I'm praying to God, no, I mean, I know I trust God completely, and still there is probably not a week goes by that I don't remind him of life choices, stuff.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add?
Wait. So which part are we saying is heretical? Or
blue
potentially?
Part. He says the blue part is.
Okay.
In Christians' minds.
Remember me and not forget your servant.
I don't think that. I mean, all I would say is to somebody who's praying that way, just maybe to consider, like, if you're asking for the same thing and never hearing a response, then maybe, like, think about that you should reflect on maybe why you are asking that way, and maybe you should be asking for something, but it could take years and then you have a change of heart, or it takes years and then you get the answer to your prayers. Sometimes it's both, like, it's right. Weird, like, because I prayed for a long time, to meet my wife, the woman that God had for me. And then I came to a part where I realized I'm like, if God wants me to be single, then that's like the best plan for my life, if that's what he wants. And so then I prayed, like, God, help me to be okay with that for like a year.
And that's exactly when you meet him.
And then God was like, okay, that's not the life plan for you. It's you know, and then, you know, my wife and I started dating shortly thereafter. But like, so, you know, he did both things. It was like he showed me that I was praying in a wrong, and really the thing was is that I was wanting a good thing I would say an idolatrous way at that point, because I thought the answer the answer to my life was having a wife. But if I was putting that ahead of God, it would have been disaster. And once my priorities were right, the way that I approached, you know, having that relationship with my wife, you know, it was way less about like what I was going to get out of it, and I was way more orientated on how I could be a helper to her, and you know, it just, you know, it was clearly like God knew what he was doing by not answering my prayers at one point, and then changing things around. So,
But I would say that it is not good for Michael to be alone.
yeah, for sure.
And so there's an aspect of it where, just to encourage us in our honesty in our prayer lives, that we are allowed to feel that our current state is not good. Because oh man, this is so difficult to determine. To be able to pray legitimately, but also have this room um, for growth in accepting the situation we're in. Somehow to be good sufferers, and also for it to be okay to want something different. I don't know exactly how to balance those things, and maybe you have to pendulum swing from one side to the other.
I mean, if you think about it, even maybe in a sense, it's like this could have been a real turning point for her because of what she's saying. You know, I would give them to the Lord, like, because maybe her prior to that, she's thinking like, I want my son to be in my house with my rival wife, and I want him to be the favorite, and I want my husband to love him more, and like he's going to be, you know, he's going to be the Joseph amongst all of
Right.
the other sons of Israel, and that was not a good thing for her to want. But when she wanted it for the Lord's sake, then it was a prayer that he could answer in a different way, you know?
That's good. That's very good. I find it odd that it doesn't say you. She's addressing this to Hashem, right? The all caps is God's name. So I will give him. She's talking to God. Then I will give him. Like she speaks as though it's third person. It's bizarre. I don't even know what to do with that.
Well, it's because of the Trinity.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Now it all makes sense.
She doesn't refer to herself
Jacob
as I.
Federecci does not endorse this portion.
So the entire statement that the entire prayer, well, she does at once, because she directs it to the Lord of Hosts at the beginning and says, if you will. But from that point on, she refers to herself as your servant before she ever says, remember me. Like she's, I don't know.
Jan,
Jesus, no.
I really like this comment by Jan God, which is, don't forget, this is probably her dreaming of producing another Samson. Samuel will be referred to as a judge as well. People don't think of Samuel as a judge because he's such a prophetic figure, but Samson, like, absolutely, Jan. Which now makes me think that his name is John, because that's how you say John in other. Jan. Samson was also dedicated as a Nazirite from birth. Fun times. I'm not sure what to do with this. I'm going to leave that for a second.
I think that's
Also, God dwells in a tent at this time. This is important to remember. So the tabernacle is set up in this way, and it is presenting it like she is going like someone petitioning a king. This will happen later in 2 Samuel. This will happen repeatedly throughout Kings where someone will petition the king, right? And so she's going, it's as though this is, I'm not talking out of the side of my mouth because Chezi has said this as well, that the design of the tabernacle is like Pharaoh's portable temple, his royal tent. That's the design of the tabernacle. So it's like going to God and asking him directly for this thing. Encountering real presence, you might say. All right, let's continue on. Who did I just make read? It was a while ago.
just made me read. So
Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say, who do you want next?
I'm gonna make Cassandra do it.
I do. Okay.
She's quiet if she's not reading or insulting 12-year-olds.
As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was speaking in her heart, only her lips moved and her voice was not heard. Therefore, Eli took her to be a drunken woman, and Eli said to her, "How long will you go on being drunk? Put your wine away from you." But Hannah answered, "No, my lord, I am a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation." Then Eli answered, "Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him." And she said, "Let your servant find favor in your eyes." Then the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad.
I love it. I love it that there's this extreme emotion, but she's like, I've done my part. So now she's almost like able to move on, which I think, Michael, is kind of what you were getting at, right? Like the pleading, but then it's like once you do that, then you're able to accept the thing. Like you're pleading with God for a wife, and then you go, you know what? I'm okay if you don't answer. I've like, or you don't answer the way that I wanted. You kind of give it up.
Yeah.
Like the stages of, what is it? The 5 stages of grief or something
Yeah,
they
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about?
Yeah, the anger and everything, denial, bargaining. Now she's at acceptance. I accept. Yeah, Dylan, I do, Adam, I think that there's something to what you were saying before.
It's funny how people always just assume a different version of prayer is drunkenness.
Right. You speak in tongues. Everyone thinks you're drunk. It is an interesting thing because there's some people that actually believe that you have to say your prayers out loud, and there's an importance. I think there might be some kind of importance in verbalizing, but some people act as though God can't receive a silent prayer. I just love it. I love the put your wine away. This drunk lady has shown up.
Do you think, was that a common thing for people to be drunk afterwards?
Well, with some of this stuff, you have drink offerings as well. There's a bunch of things that you could see feasting accompanying the sacrificing, right? So to what extent that would be apparent, I'm not sure. Cassandra, yeah, go ahead.
Because it says that he was watching her. So I don't know. I was thinking maybe he had this idea that she was already like drunk,
Well, okay.
like that.
When we're dealing with the text, we're dealing with it bit by bit, but there's something we know in chapter 2 that we don't know right here. What do we know about Eli, Cassandra? You were already mentioning it.
He's the priest.
He's the priest, but what else do
And
we
he
know?
has 2 bad sons.
2 bad sons. It only mentioned above. This is why some of this stuff is important, because that changes how we interpret everything someone says. It just says in passing, where is it?
Hophni and Phineas.
Yeah. Yeah. He had 2 sons, Hophni and Phineas, who were priests of the Lord. Just says it in passing, whatever, right? But you know that Hophni and Phineas are douchebags, that they're the absolute worst. We know later in the text that it speaks of, now maybe this is decades later, that the eyes of Eli are fading, and that he has purposely blinded himself to what it's difficult not to consider that the blindness of Eli is some kind of judgment. Yoav is also saying that their names are Egyptian. So again, these little tiny, I like Phineas in Hebrew, it's Pinchas. The image of them not being that great, and then that changes the way him judging Hannah, when we see Hannah as a really great person, I think you can see, I see him as being unable to see what's really happening.
Like Samson.
Like Samson. Yeah. He's got bad eyes.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, clearly that's the thing that happened before. Maybe it's, I don't know. I mean, I wonder if it's like a thing of him noticing things and then realizing like, oh, I didn't notice what I was seeing correctly, and so then he stops trying to notice things. Like maybe this is the impetus of that change of his vision.
That's an interesting idea. But he definitely, there's fine favor in your eyes, like she wants God to see her. And then it's going to say specifically in the next chapter that now a prophet in those days was called a seer.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea that Samuel is going to become a seer, he sees the word of the Lord. That's an important part of it too. Like we think of it, he hears a voice. He doesn't say that. He says he sees the word. Okay? It's like the word physically manifests to him. The word of the Lord physically manifests. The Logos is in flesh before Samuel. Jacob Federici does not endorse this stream. So there's this importance of sight, and we have here the priest is not seeing things correctly. But again, there's something big happening here, because she still participates in the system that Eli is in charge of. And Eli is going to be given Samuel when he's born. He's part of a corrupt institution, but she honors the institution even if the people are bad.
You know, I wonder if it's kind of like what Jonathan Peugeot, why he talks about like why he prefers like the liturgical forms of worship, because it's like, even if it's, you know, even if the priest is terrible, it's like, oh, the little 8-minute sermon is just like a minor part of the thing. And if you're still following like the form of the liturgy, then the message is still getting across in the right way. Like even if the priest doing it doesn't really care or believe it, you know. And I mean, I think you could say that probably fits Eli. Like even in the thing of, you know, when Samuel keeps waking him up and he's like, it doesn't seem like he's really that impressed with God speaking to Samuel. He's like, oh, okay, this is what the rules say. Like, if you hear a voice and there's nobody there, it's probably God. Like, you know.
Well, there's a secondary interesting part to that, though, which is that when Eli knows that God is talking to Samuel, Eli knows that means he is being called to the mat.
Yeah.
He knows that means it's going to be bad for him.
Well, because he knows he doesn't hear from God.
That's right. That's right.
I have a weird question. It's not a weird question, but it relates to that.
Go ahead.
And it relates back to timing of asking and things. Do you think there is a way in which this entire story is set up so that she will be crying at the doorstep where Eli can see her at the right moment, so that she can promise God Samuel, so he will go and receive the word for that Eli needs to hear? And would he have heard him the same way if he didn't know this already when she goes to bring him to him as a Nazarite?
I don't know.
Well, I don't think there's coincidences. So, I mean, yeah, I would say it would probably be part of the whole thing. Because, I mean, it seems like, you know, I don't know. It's hard to say, like, is this a normative practice? Is this something that happens all the time with, like, parents dropping their kids off at the tabernacle or whatever? Like, probably not. But it is like, okay, she knows this one guy there because she had this interaction. He knows what she was praying about. Like, you know, there is a connection there. So it, like, makes sense that, you know, you would set it up. It's not like there was, you know, oh, no, don't drop your kid off here. Bring him to the official orphanage or whatever for,
Right.
you know, whatever, the altar boy training school or whatever, you know, like, it kind of seems like, I mean, I think it's kind of interesting because well, you know, especially like in Baptist churches and stuff, you know, where they don't do infant baptism, but they always point to this chapter as the reason for why you do a baby dedication, and that it's not just like a substitute baptism, it's its own real thing. And, you know, so there's like a lot of new ground that kind of takes place in this whole thing because, I mean, you could say almost like people prophesied before, but I think Samuel's really the first one where you have like the office of a prophet. I'm thinking, I'm not positive, but like where that becomes like an official thing. And it's also where you have like, you know, the kingship being an official thing, you know, in this time. And so it's like you have a new kind of practice or a new sacrament or whatever in like this dedication, which and I would say, you know, because people will say like baptism and circumcision are supposed to be like equated, but like circumcision just brings you into the people of Israel. Like it brings you
Right.
into the nation. But what Hannah does with dedication is she's giving her son like completely to God to do with as he pleases, basically. And it's like that. It's a free will thing. It's not part of a covenant. It's not her.
Yeah.
It's not her like following the rules like everybody else had to, you know, circumcise your baby because those are the rules. If you don't circumcise, you're out of the covenant. So you circumcise, that means you're in the covenant. But this is going above and beyond. And because it's going above and beyond, Samuel is this extraordinary vessel of God that God uses.
Well, it's interesting too because, and you can see this at the beginning of Luke's gospel, when a firstborn son is born, for the first that opens the womb, that's the language which is used, right? And Hannah's womb is closed here. For the firstborn son which opens the womb, there's a special offering which is to be made to God. That it's as though, like, it's a reminder that those firstborn, because of the Exodus story, there's a special sense in which they belong to God in this like extra sense. And it seems like Hannah is really, really like making that literal, making it physicalized and in his life, that he's basically going to be a slave to Eli, is the way it's kind of set up. Is he is the servant of the temple.
A living sacrifice.
A living sacrifice, one might say. Michael might say. Yeah, it's a beautiful image. I heard this story where like a family had 10 children, and the 10th child they made become a nun because they literally tithed the child. Because like, well, 10% goes to the Lord. So here you go. Well, and again, sorry, Jan God is bringing this up. And now thank you, Jan God, for making the connection between Samson and Samuel, because you could see Samuel as the successful version of Samson. Because Samson is only there because of his utter failure. Like he fails upwards. Whereas I hiccup there. Whereas Samuel actually is a success.
I do like, though, I mean, you do see that Samuel and Samson both are, in their way, a living sacrifice. And
I don't think Samson is a living sacrifice. He seems to be a dying sacrifice, actually.
Well, you know, he had a good run.
No way.
Just at the end, you mean? At the end, because of his death. He had a sacrificial death after a sacrificial sort of life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's finish this. Well, okay, we'll finish this section. Sandy, go.
They rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord. And then they went back to their house at Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah, his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And in due time, Hannah conceived and bore a son. And she called his name Samuel, for she said, I have asked for him from the Lord.
Wonderful. They worshipped before Hashem. Again, it's as though his tent is God's dwelling place. There's a special way in which God's presence is there. So to pray there is going before something that you recognize as God's manifestation, his face. That you're going in that place to seek him in a special way. I have nothing else to add to there. So now I'm just going to make Cassandra read instead, unless anyone else has anything to say.
I do think it's interesting. Well, I guess, you could kind of know because obviously Elkanah had other children with his other wife, but but just the language that was in the same in Ruth about like God closing her womb and now opening her womb, and that that all happens after the prayer. Like it gives you the whole timeline of how things happen or whatever. But like God did a normal thing, like used normal means or whatever to do a miraculous thing or whatever, I guess.
Yeah. Shalom Aleichem to our friend Chezi. Cassandra, now you have no excuse. Michael will not interrupt you.
Right.
The man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer to the Lord the yearly sacrifice and to pay his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, As soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him, so that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and dwell there forever. Elkanah, her husband, said to her, do what seems best to you. Wait until you have weaned him, only may the Lord establish his word. So the woman remained and nursed her son until she weaned him. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine. And she brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh, and the child was young. Then they slaughtered the bull, and they brought the child to Eli, and she said, O my Lord, as you live, my Lord, I am the woman who is standing here in your presence praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed. And the Lord has granted me my petition that I made to him. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there.
Perfect. Perfect. I feel like this is a reference to the end of Psalm 23. And I will live in the house of the Lord forever. Like this is, so my perspective is that is a perspective that the New Testament has, and also I believe exists in a lot of Jewish tradition, which is that the tabernacle, and the temple, yes, is designed to look like palaces, but it also is that when Moses goes up into the cloud, he sees into heaven the pattern of what heaven looks like. And that this is, to some extent, the tabernacle and the temple is heaven on earth. And that's why it's so important that all the elements are the way that they are. And that you can see these elements in the beginning of Ezekiel, in the beginning of Isaiah. It looks like, when they look into heaven, it looks like the temple. That's what looking into heaven looks like. Okay. For those who are Christians who are watching, that's when John is looking into heaven, there's an altar there, right? There's God's throne room. And before the throne of God, it says that there's 7 flames. That is the menorah, right? Like this is like when they think of the pattern of heaven, they think of this place. So the notion of the child will dwell in the house of God forever, as long as he lives, he is with the Lord. Like, and this idea, which isn't fully developed, but continues to be developed, this idea of where we go when we die. Abraham's bosom and all this other stuff, but there's a notion of God's presence, being able to enter his house and to be before him. Okay. Do you guys have any thoughts before I go to some of the chats?
No.
Okay. Adam David Major says, does prayer consecrate the place in which it is performed? Is it okay to pray in one's room in case one can't join a congregation?
Yes.
I do. Don't know if that answers the question, but
I do think personal prayer is good, but I also think that there's a special way in which God's presence is there the more people are gathered. Because that is, like, as people that believe in the image of God, more people is to be before the image of God. And particularly if you are a Christian, there's something of becoming a body, that we become the temple of God, which is to speak of his presence being with us.
so in Judaism, they need the minyan, but
The 10.
otherwise, what would you see if you look at it then from the Christian stance as the body, an appropriate representation of the body for joined prayer?
Well, and there's prayers that Jews believe that you can do even if you're completely alone.
Mm-hmm.
But there are specific prayers which require the minyan, which requires the 10, which requires enough of a remnant, right? We were kind of talking a little bit about that last week. And there is something to be said about enough people to hold someone accountable, enough people, because the problem is that so easily when you're just alone, I don't have any problem with people praying alone. That's not it. But if that's the only way that you do things, it's very easy for you to not be called to account. And so there's an importance in biblical thinking of having multiple witnesses, and being held accountable to someone, to authorities. I don't have a good answer to this one. Why Ramatiyim in the first mention and Rama in the second? I got no good answer for that. More specific? I don't know. Any other thoughts on this chapter? Michael, thank you very much for bringing in the baby dedication, because I wasn't sure. Most churches, when they do baby dedications, don't even claim. Like they kind of go, Jesus is taken to the temple.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've always thought it was an important thing. Our new pastor that's been at our church for coming up on a year. He's big on that. He talks about it every time we have a baby dedication. So and I think it's a good thing, because I mean it's interesting too, because it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, it is something that the parents are doing. It's like, which is kind of weird with baptism, I guess, because like it is for you, like if you were converting, but then it's like just a thing that your parents tell you happened. Otherwise, if if it has, like, it doesn't have any there's no memory of it or whatever, but it is important for the parents. So I mean, that's why I guess it's sort of a pragmatic response, but I like the having the baby dedication when that's for the parents, and then have the kid get baptized when the kid wants to make their faith more public, I suppose. So
for the local theater, I'm doing the importance of being earnest, and the character wants to change his name to Ernest, and he's trying to talk to the local priest to get him christened, to change his first name to Ernest. And they're like, weren't you already christened? And he says, well, I don't remember anything of the sort. That idea of like, baptism is pretty important. You'd think I'd remember something like that, right?
Well, yeah, it's funny too, because it's like, if you have most places that baptize babies, then you end up having to do something else later anyway, like confirmation. So it's like you still end up with the same two life events, being covered.
Right. I'm going to have to think about whether or not we will spend more time on Hannah's prayer, but I think the end of the narrative is not where we just were, which is chapter 1, but then it becomes a poem. Look, Cassandra, I didn't write poems for this book of the Bible, so don't worry. This book of the Bible actually wrote its own poems.
Wow. It looks like you have another project to do then. You have to continue.
Oh, no. Too many poems. Okay, will you dramatically read this like it's a poem?
Okay. And Hannah prayed and said, my heart exalts in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. There is none holy like the Lord, for there is none beside you. There is no rock like our God. Talk no more so very proudly. Let not arrogance come from your mouth. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty are broken, but the feeble bind on strength. Those who were full have hired themselves out for bread. but those who were hungry have ceased to hunger. The barren has borne 7, but she who has many children is forlorn. The Lord kills and brings to life. He brings down to Sheol and raises up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and he exalts. He raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. He will guard the feet of his faithful ones, but the wicked shall be cut off in darkness. For not by might shall a man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. Against them he will thunder in heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed.
Okay. What are some things that immediately stood out to you about that little poem?
Well, it seems like in having no kids and like a part-time husband, Hannah's become quite the theologian there. So she's put her free time to good use.
I was gonna say, I don't know if it's vengeful, but it's like it's something. It's like very
That-
strong.
Okay, so Michael was making a different point, but I know exactly what you're talking about, Cassandra, where, gee, I wonder who this line is aimed at. She who has many children is forlorn, right? Like, the barren has borne 7. She just had 1 kid, right at this point, but it's very clearly attacking her enemy, where she's like upfront about it's very, very aimed at the other woman a little bit.
Well, I mean, I think, it does show, and I mean, I do say this is a serious thing, like saying, she had a lot of time to think about this stuff. And like thinking, if she's gone from a point where whatever her initial reasons for her being unhappy about not having children, and the progression over time to where she's giving her son to the Lord for his service, like if it started off maybe as just petty jealousy or something like that, I think that she really has probably had a long time to kind of think of the theological significance of childbearing and what it means for a woman. And I think that she's done a great spiritual act or whatever by having this child that she's given into the service of the Lord. And so it's not, I think that she really sees the spiritual significance that happens through these natural kind of events in a way.
And I do think that she remembers this and wants to honor it by turning it into a song. I think that's actually what happens. And then that it's like all of the things that she's dealing with and will deal with becomes a song that then she can immortalize. Like, this is what I went through. This is where it all is. And I think that this becomes like this little story is kind of the theology of the book itself. The idea of it is Adonai who kills and brings to life. He brings down to Sheol and rises up. He makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and he exalts. He raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap. This is some of the drama that is going to go on in the following sections. Also, though, that seems I was just talking about what do they believe about what happens after you die. The theology of the resurrection is here. He brings down to the grave and raises up. That's within there. And there's also this little bit. Hashem will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. So we understand the role anointing is going to play. David gets anointed, right? The horn of oil being poured onto him. But there is no king at this time. So he will give strength to his king. What is she talking about?
That is interesting.
The poems always seem like they have a bit of prophecy to them or something.
That's right. That's right. And I said this to Chad in my conversation with him, where there's a story where a prophet is brought in and they're like, do you have a word from the Lord? And he's like, do you have a musician? And a musician comes in and starts playing the lyre, which is the precursor to the guitar. So he just starts strumming along, and then he just starts spitting verse, and that is the prophecy. Is he just feels the music, and then prophesies about what's going to happen.
Interesting.
It's a pretty cool image.
It is actually.
We've all had, like, everyone thinks of prophecy as being like this direct connection with God and not not merely engaging with the person's emotions. But in this story, it's like, no. He's engaging emotionally with this music, and then the way he engages, he's able to speak God's word. I think that's in 1 Kings, 2 Kings.
Excuse me.
I don't know if I have anything else to say. You did an excellent job reading, Cassandra.
Thank you.
It's a good poem. Oh, I do have something to say. There is another poem in the Bible that is based on this poem. Does anyone know what it is?
Is it in the New Testament?
It is. I believe that Mary would have known this passage of scripture well, and that her blessing to God when she finds out that she's pregnant is based on this. The okay, so maybe we should do it back to back. Where he talks of the Lord bringing up, and the one who has is, just find it. Okay, can I get you to, in a slightly faster rhythm, read it again, Cassandra, while I pull up the other passage?
Okay. My heart exalts in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. There is none holy like the Lord, for there is none besides you. There is no rock like our God. Talk no more so very proudly. Let not arrogance come from your mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty are broken, but the feeble bind on strength.
Change. You need to, yeah.
Those who are full have hired themselves out for bread, but those who are hungry have ceased to hunger. The barren has borne 7, but she who has many children is forlorn. The Lord kills and brings to life. He brings down to Sheol and raises up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and he exalts. He raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor. All right. Do you want me to read this too?
Sorry, I thought I was sorry. My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he has looked on the humble estate of his servant. For behold, from now on all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. And his mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts, and he has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humble estate. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham and to his offspring forever. So there's this connection of the bringing down, the rich being sent away empty. I believe also even the seated with the mighty. I think that's in there. And I think there's a little bit of this in Elizabeth's response. But yeah, it's a...
Yeah, the hungry. Where is that one? I just saw that. Those who are hungry have ceased to hunger in Hannah's, and then over here, he's filled the hungry with good things. It's interesting how Hannah's is all like present tense, like this is what the Lord does, and Mary's is past tense. He has shown strength. He has brought down. He has filled the hungry. He has helped the servant.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because she's got all those other books of the Bible to look back on.
Yeah, yeah. That she can build on it and even take it for its structure and kind of do her cover of Hannah's plea, if you will. Yeah, that's a good thing to notice, Michael, and that it functions that way. It is a summary of what will happen in the rest of the book, which is also one of those things I love so much. When I really, really like that about this, that it's kind of a preview of what the rest of the book is going to be about and what it's going to be like. And then the end of that is where we are now, which is so waiting for what's to come, trying to be faithful, living with corrupt institutions. All of those things are part of our daily life right now. That's what we have to live with, and moving forward in the right way.
Yeah, and a lot of these books, you could see like they're living in obviously corrupt times, but their reaction to it isn't, I guess, like what, protest, revolution, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just to keep doing what they know they should be doing. Because I was thinking about when Daniel was in Babylon and he was the only one. He was basically worshiping by himself because everybody else, they were, they didn't know God. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a very interesting perspective to have, because I believe in North America we basically lost it the past 100 years. We're just getting it back now, and that's part of the disillusion that people are going through. A lot of baby boomers can't handle how bad life is right now, and part of that is because they were promised that everything would always get better. Right? If you were born 50 years ago or further back, if you were born 50 years ago, every decade your life expectancy was getting longer and longer. The oldest someone was living was just extending out. The expectancy of people surviving cancer just gets longer and longer. And what they're realizing now is, yeah, it's longer, but instead of dying when you're a strong person in your 60s, instead you're basically withered away completely when you're in your 80s. That's how you die, instead of still dying in your strength. And they thought the economy for the last 100 years has just been in this constant up, that it's impossible for people to understand that their children are not going to be having houses. Like there's just a lot that's going on, that's a forgetting that we are actually supposed to be living faithfully in a bad time, that we live in exile, that our institutions are corrupt. Like the idea that people didn't realize that, it's like, of course they're corrupt. Like, that's the world we live in.
Well, I remember reading, and it seemed, I mean, I guess maybe there was a certain turning point around something like Nixon and Watergate, at least in the US, where all of a sudden it's like something was shattered, and you could see behind, you could see how the sausage is made, kind of thing. Like there's a sense of corruption and lying, and
Yeah.
you know, there wasn't as much of that. I remember my grandma telling me when she was a little girl and Kennedy was assassinated, she said everybody cried. It wasn't political, and there wasn't like celebrations or something like that. And I was thinking, the way it feels now, if that were to happen, if a sitting president was assassinated, I don't know what it would actually look like.
A way of thinking about it is, I used to watch The Daily Show when President Bush, like in 2002, 2001, 2000. Like I remember watching Jon Stewart at that time, and someone asked him what he would do if George W. Bush came on the show. And I remember him like getting a little, like changing his stance and actually saying, well, I have so much respect for the office of president that I like, he said he wouldn't go after him if he had him on the show, because he has so much respect for the office. And I just remember thinking to myself, I think about that all the time now, because I don't think that's the case. I think we have entered a place where that's no longer, like if Jon Stewart had the opportunity when Trump was in office, he wouldn't have had that stance that he had when Bush was in office, that he would have gone after him and he would have wanted to ridicule him.
Yeah, there's not much sacred, like with meme culture the way it is, everything gets mocked right after the event.
Sorry.
Right.
Yeah,
No.
and my grandma, she told me that story too, because she said growing up, she went to Sunday school. There are certain things you're supposed to do. Don't lie, don't steal, you know, don't do this bad stuff. And she said there was a moment when she was little where she realized that her mom lied. And her mom was like kind of a kleptomaniac, so she got in trouble for stealing stuff too. But she said, you know, it was kind of shocking to her that she realized that all of the stuff she was taught, people, they weren't really doing it. And there's like kind of a similar feel. I watched on YouTube, there was like these, I think they're asking baby boomer questions about stuff. And one of them, like people who lived through like the drug years and sex years, and they talked about that too, where they realized that their parents are like having affairs with each other. Like there was all of this corruption stuff that was happening in their nice little, you know, suburban towns and stuff. And that really affected the way they were as adults.
Yeah, this kind of feels tied. My friend's grandma, he's talking to his grandma can still remember World War II. And during COVID, his grandma said that COVID was worse than World War II. And now, mind you, she's French Canadian. So how bad was it in Quebec, right? Eating less meat, possibility that family members are going to die, all this stuff. But it's Quebec, right? You're not really worrying about, was there really U-boats in the St. Lawrence River, whatever. Like it wasn't a real concern. It wasn't like living in London where there's actual bombing. But the point, when I think about it though, is that World War II felt meaningful, even if it was horrifying. Whereas, like, if you went and fought in World War II, that was a courageous death. Whereas COVID was without meaning. And what was our civilization? How much were we together? Right? All those things are very, very different. So it's very different for us to have any faith in institutions.
Yeah, well, that's a thing. Yeah, that's true. It's like the government was against its people almost in a certain way with the way the shutdowns were and everything.
My mom said COVID was worse too. Her point, and she also said something in relation to what Young God just said. So first, she said that COVID was worse. It was an international event, but you had no sense of really. Everybody used the phrase "we're all in this together," but nobody really was. Whereas she said when like everybody would get up and read the newspaper in the Second World War, everybody would look for the names they knew. Everybody would. So there was this thing where there really was a shared experience of, even though things would be happening overseas. And I mean, we've always
And that's when
back thing.
that's when the national anthem before sporting events begins. Is I believe it's during World War II. I might be mistaken. It's World War I, but I believe it's World War II. And just to think what that would be like, you're gathering together. Oh, we're just having fun, but at the beginning, we are going to remember that we're all in it together.
So I'm curious also what you think of what Young God said about war. My mother used to say to me, every generation has their war to go through. You haven't had yours yet. And she did kind of say COVID was probably in Canada ours. I look at what's going on in the world right now and I'm like, no, there's actual wars out there that are. But she always said what happened in war, she said, was in some way or another, war is always the means of getting wealth. You know, somebody's building the tanks, somebody's selling the guns, somebody's doing this. Somehow or another, the economy shifts around war in a way it doesn't during peace. And I was like, oh, that's really disgusting in a way. But so I'm kind of wondering. So
well, yeah, and this happens with the kings and everything. I don't know what I'm supposed to do because I feel like everything's fallen apart so much that it doesn't feel. I don't know how I'm supposed to support these bad institute. Like I know that God works through institutions even if they're corrupt, right? Even if the church is skimming off a little from the top, there are real people that you can meet there who can help out and all this other stuff. But there's also so much corruption that it feels like it's reached a breaking point. And it's difficult to figure out because I don't know if I think it's any more corrupt than it was 100 years ago. Because the reasons why people went to war, especially World War I has no good reason for occurring. Right? Like World War II basically happens because of World War I, and World War I happened for no good reason. Like you go through all the reasons why World War I happened, and you're like, and what of those reasons is justified? And you're like, I got nothing. And that's the way I'd feel right now. If Canada was at war with anyone, I would be a draft dodger.
I don't know that war as it may come next would give you the ability to be a draft dodger.
That's a good point. Also, I'm already in Canada. Where would I flee to? Because that was the thing during Vietnam. People came up here.
Yeah.
You have to go to the mountains, flee to the hills.
Yeah. I knew a guy and he was a homeless dude and it's like, how'd you get to Canada? He's like, well, I was drafted in Korea, so I came here.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Cassandra?
Oh, well, I was thinking about, because in the story it says they go to make sacrifices at the temple, and that's where Eli and his bad sons are. So they still have to be a part of this thing where it's being not ran, but I mean, like, these people that they're looking for toward a certain kind of guidance and spirituality are not, I don't know, they don't believe it or something. They don't take it seriously.
Yeah, like
But
it's
they take it seriously, so they still have to be a part of the system, whatever it is.
yeah. And man, with that bit too, that means it doesn't say it in the text, but it says that the sons, Hophni and Phinehas, that they are eating the choice bits from the sacrifices. So are these two guys like stealing some of this offering?
Yeah, it
That,
said they were cutting it off before it went to be offered. They're taking it off so that they can eat it.
but it doesn't
And
see, this is the thing though, Sandy, that's in the next section of the narrative.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't include it in this story, but it's one of those things that, is it happening right now at this point? To what extent is it going on? When does the corruption happen? Is it slow? Is it all
yeah, I
at
wonder how
once?
visible this would have been, because in the next section, Eli kind of rebukes them because it says they're also sleeping with the women who are serving there.
Yeah.
And so they're doing all kinds of bad stuff that they're not taking this seriously, and then they have to die for it. But
Oh, now I'm thinking of, is it Proverbs or is it Ecclesiastes? Nothing new under the sun. Oh,
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that you face particularly in this, which is not merely the corruption of people, but the corruption really being seen in their sons being in positions of privilege and taking advantage of everything that comes their way. So, the people who show up to make offerings, they just assume that this is how things are done. Oh, I'm just doing the thing. It's fine. I'm just taking this. Don't worry. Oh, give it to me this way. This is the way that we do things here. You just go, oh, okay. I trust the system. Very upsetting.
yeah. Well, you have to trust the system a little, I guess. There's not
Yeah.
not as much outside of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to democracy. It's almost like democracy was a straw man this whole time. Yes, but this is a period of time where it feels like it, Jan. It feels like a straw man, whereas at other points it is, but doesn't feel like it.
Is this the idea of the Matrix? Like, things look good, and so you don't notice the behind it part?
It's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like when you're in, even if you look really good when you're young, if you don't have self-confidence, you don't feel good. Versus the opposite being true, where it's like,
so what do we do to not get sucked in? Like, my mind's been looping around all of the stuff we're talking about now, going, I've just gone, you know what? I'm prepared to die somehow or another. The one known factor in life is I am going to die. Hello, cat. Oh, cat. You know, it's unavoidable. I'm going to die. What am I going to do about getting there? That's the only choice I have, is how do I live on that journey towards, hey, here's the inevitable. And then I think back on Hannah and her tears and her prayer and the whole thing. And I think it's not that she wasn't able to live without the son that she so desperately wanted. Because, I mean, he's weaned. He's a year or so old. She's giving him up already to God. She has loaned him to the Lord, right? She's without him already, and she's going to be without him unless God gives her other children, which it doesn't say he did. Not yet, anyways. She's gone back to the state she was in when she was crying and praying. Just her husband, and the other wife lording it over her. She's capable of living that. So what is it that makes the difference?
Mhm.
Something made the difference.
That is an interesting. And as we said, even before she's pregnant, she's already given it up to God. She walks away being like, I can just, like, or
Sorry, I've got to not read the. Well,
the reason to keep living is because cats can't make cat videos. That is correct.
Yeah, I miss having a cat
it's true.
sometimes.
I can't have a cat unless I deal with the whole Peterson issue. He going here. Look at the
Do you have a 2-screen system, David?
I do. Oh, can you see? Yeah, there's my
I
second
was
screen.
wondering.
That's the whole work thing. That's me working from
Okay.
home.
One work computer, one gaming computer.
Yeah. This is my most realistic painting I've ever made.
Oh, my mother, right up until her death, talked about this painting that I did of my cat, who was also a lovely gray cat like that. Only I didn't paint it out of, with brushes and paint. I painted it with newspapers or magazine strips and glue. And
Collage.
I did, but it looked like oil painting. Yeah. And I think my ex threw it out at some point.
Oh no.
That with my high school yearbooks. Yep. Amazing what you lose.
Yeah. Well, it appears that I've been commanded to end this stream.
Well, it has gone over time.
Yeah, she looks very mighty right now. She's very
What's
tiny.
her name?
Silhouette, but we just call her Silly.
Oh,
So this is Silly, and she's a goof.
but she's gorgeous.
She's a chaos gremlin.
Hey, silly.
She's a murderer.
Yeah. That's a cat's calling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, you should tell that to my other cat, who is
Oh.
a large gay man. I don't know. That's very clearly. I thought of something funny and I want to share it. If I share a movie clip and it's on YouTube, Michael, do you know if we get demonetized for that? Is that how that works?
Probably fine.
Keep it short.
It's on YouTube. It should be fine.
Is this channel monetized?
No.
But you don't get
Monetized live?
but you get strikes against you. Sorry, you get strikes if you do
okay.
something.
Well, you could. Jacob has at times shared a few things under that penalty risk.
Well, we're an hour 38 in, so maybe they won't notice.
I think it's done by AI. It's a 2-minute clip. Okay.
Maybe. It
I'm
might be
gonna
okay.
Yeah,
Play it.
I'll share it. I think you guys will find this video funny. Okay. Okay, there we are. So Hunt for the Wilder People. It was Michael when I asked everyone the question and you're like, a Nazarite? And I was like, you almost said Jesus, I know it.
No, I wasn't
That's
gonna
what
say.
I- No, not Jesus.
Hmm.
That's all I have to say. Thank you, everyone, for attending. That's when Taika Waititi was still good. case anyone was wondering. Hunt for the Wilted People. Okay. Goodbye. Goodbye. I don't have it. I don't know. I don't have a better ending. You got anything else you want to say?
Nope.
Awesome.
Nope.
Okay.
Later.
Bye, everybody.